The lecture hall buzzed with restless energy tail flicks, wing flutters, and soft hisses of anticipation echoing across the domed ceiling. It was always like this before combat analytics at the Galactic Defense Academy. Dozens of species, hundreds of cadets, all crammed into a single amphitheater designed to foster unity and, more often than not, thinly veiled competition. Hover displays glowed dimly above each row, flickering through battlefield maps and combat ratios with the clean, sterile certainty that only math could provide. The numbers were comfort, predictable, rational. That was the entire point of this class. War distilled into digestible metrics. Off to the side, slouched quietly in the back row, sat a single human cadet. Nathan Carter kept his eyes low and his posture smaller than he was. Though he wore the same academy gray as everyone else, he might as well have been wearing war paint. Every few seconds, he felt at glances. Fleeting, uncertain, curious. Is it true your people fought wars without orbital support? Someone had whispered near him earlier that week. He hadn't answered. Now, as the lecture timer counted down its final seconds, the seats filled out. A few late arrivals fluttered in, including the blue-scaled Shinari cadet third-in-class ranking, notoriously inquisitive. Her nameplate read, Kiriel, daughter of Shadaquil, but everyone just called her Kira. Kira twisted in her seat, eyes landing on Nathan for just a moment before turning forward. Her clawed fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk. She was excited. Everyone was. Today's topic, combat efficiency by species, based on recent inter-alliance skirmishes. The instructor entered on silent boots, a stiff-looking Zenthari with pale gray skin and gill slits that pulsed slightly when he breathed. He reached the central platform, nodded once, and the ambient light dimmed. The holograms sharpened. Let's begin. Charts snapped into place mid-air. Bars, ratios, names of species. The instructor's voice was even, clipped, practiced. As you can see, the comparative efficiency of units is fairly consistent. Telari Rangers operate at a 2.3 to 1 exchange rate in jungle warfare. Kravon Vanguards average 4.1 to 1-inch siege operations. These metrics help us allocate resources and plan tactical deployments accordingly. Kira shot up her hand without hesitation. Instructor Varex, what's the kill ratio of one Earth Marine? There were a few scattered chuckles. Some cadets whispered. A Turlaxian 2 rows ahead muttered something in its native tongue, likely a joke. Nathan's shoulders stiffened. Varex froze. It was subtle. A pause, just 2 seconds too long, enough to raise hackles across half the species in the room. His gill slits flared once, then closed. He blinked slowly. I'm sorry, Cadet Kira. Could you repeat that? She did, louder this time, still grinning. What's the kill ratio of one Earth Marine? This time, no one laughed. The question hung there, delicate and barbed. Varex turned his gaze toward the far wall, as though hoping the answer had been written there all along. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. There is no reliable metric. The room stilled. A Varnathi cadet raised his head, translator blinking as it stuttered. What do you mean no metric? That's not possible. Every species has a quantifiable range of effectiveness. It's the foundation of tactical theory. I am aware, Varex said, and yet the data refuses to conform. Statistical models break under Earth Marine engagement. Ratios swing wildly from scenario to scenario, ranging from 10 to 1 to, well, no survivable outcome at all, on either side. On either side, Kira frowned. So, what's the average? There is no average, only case studies, and even those are difficult. Murmurs spread like heat through the room. Varex flicked a hand, the hologram restructured. Gone were the neat graphs and comparison tables. Now, a new image appeared. A narrow mountain pass under snow, bodies half buried in drifts, wreckage turned to barricades. Case study. Trillin Sector, 4 years ago. 1 platoon of Earth Marines assigned to hold this pass after a retreat. Initial enemy force numbered 87. Reinforcements raised that number to 312 over 3 days. Kira leaned forward. What were the Marine casualties? Total depletion of ammunition within the first 48 hours. 8 killed in action, 3 critically wounded. Survivors improvised weapons using cookware, field rations, and metal poles from collapsed structures. The last attackers withdrew after suffering over 200 casualties. One Marine was confirmed to have used a portable stove as a melee weapon. Kira squinted. How do you kill someone with a stove? You lift it and hit them until they stop moving, Nathan said softly. Every nearby cadet turned. Even Varex glanced up, surprised. Nathan immediately looked down again. His hand had gripped the edge of his desk hard enough to leave white marks. That's what my uncle said. He was one of the 3 wounded. The silence settled like dust. Another cadet, green-skinned, fins twitching nervously, cleared his throat. Wait, they held a mountain pass for 3 days without ammo? That's not strategy, that's suicidal. Varex didn't answer. Instead, he gestured again. A new image filled the space, a frozen wasteland, tracks through snow, heat signatures blinking softly. Imin, Insasnau. Next case. Velkin Ridge. A dropship was down during extraction. Survivor. Lance Corporal Avery Marks. Pelvic fracture, compound fracture in the right femur. Frostbite onset within 20 hours. Temperature ranged between -40 and -62 Celsius. The image zoomed in, a long trail, uneven, crawling. He crawled across 16 kilometers, took him 4 days. During that time, he subsisted on snow and the contents of a first aid kit. On the 5th day, he returned to the extraction site. A red circle appeared on the map, over a dozen blinking indicators. He brought back 14 enemy prisoners. A pause. Kira whispered, "What?" He disarmed, subdued, and force-marched 14 Velkari soldiers back to the wreck site. 2 were injured. He stabilized their wounds using bandages fashioned from his own clothing. When questioned, he reported that he captured them because, quote, they looked cold and were arguing too loud to notice me. Now, it was just disbelief. Cadets staring in slack-jawed silence, murmurs turning to quiet disbelief. Someone hissed, "Is that a joke?" Varex's voice was stone. "No." Kira turned again, locking eyes with Nathan. This time, he didn't look away. Her eyes were full of awe, curiosity, maybe even fear. "Do you know him too?" Nathan shook his head. "He trained with my cousin." Another beat passed. Then another hand rose, this one more hesitant. "But surely that's just an outlier. A freak event? Even your own data shows some consistency with other species. What makes Earth Marines so unstable in terms of predictability?" Varex took a long breath. "Because they refused to surrender. Not symbolically, not metaphorically. Quite literally. Entire campaigns have stalled because a single Earth Marine was cut off and refused to die quietly. One case required diverting 2 full battalions to recover an artillery piece because the Earth Marine next to it refused to let go. He had shrapnel embedded in both lungs. He couldn't even stand. He just lay there with a sidearm and made them pay for every step forward. Silence fell again. And this time, it stayed. Eyes drifted back to Nathan. He shifted uncomfortably, legs drawn close, hands folded in his lap. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't proud. He looked like someone who had seen a memory come to life, and wished it hadn't. Kira tilted her head. "Is it true?" Nathan closed his eyes. "They don't talk about it like stories," he said finally. "They talk about it like scars." A long breath. Every cadet heard it. A quiet exhale. And then Varex, solemn and still, stepped forward one last time. "Asking for a kill ratio for an Earth Marine," he said softly, "is like asking how much fire a supernova produces. The answer isn't numerical, it's existential." The lecture hall hadn't moved in over a minute. That was nearly unheard of at the Galactic Defense Academy, where even silence usually buzzed with the restless rustling of wings, shifting tails, or the ambient hum of translators processing a dozen languages at once. Now, nothing. The only sound was the soft hiss of the ceiling filtration system and the subtle ping of Varex's display changing slides. No new images appeared. Just a blank screen, no stats, no numbers. Nathan Carter could feel the stillness settle over him like a weighted blanket. His pulse hadn't slowed since he'd spoken. He hated that he'd said anything, but once it was out, he couldn't leave it hanging. The silence that followed wasn't reverence, it was recalibration. Every cadet in that room was trying to force what they'd just heard into a framework their minds could tolerate. Varex broke the silence without ceremony. Let us proceed with the next case. The hologram flickered to life again, casting faint blue shadows across faces still frozen in disbelief. This is the Jeridan Uprising, year 48 post-Accord. At the time, it was a minor conflict, mostly urban skirmishes. 2 Earth Marines were embedded with a local militia group tasked with reinforcing the Eastern District. That reinforcement never arrived. The militia defected. Someone near the front murmured, "They left them?" Variks nodded. One was killed in the initial betrayal. The other, Staff Sergeant Lena Brooks, was severely injured. Initial combat records show 2 cracked ribs and a dislocated shoulder from a fall during rooftop fighting. She was believed dead. She was not. The screen zoomed into a mess of rooftops, then filtered through satellite scans, motion trackers, and thermal overlays. Blips moved in the darkness. For 6 days, she waged an asymmetrical campaign alone: close-quarters sabotage, sniper fire with scavenged weapons, explosives made from waste recyclers and repurposed cleaning chemicals. Nathan winced slightly. He'd heard this one before. Too many times. His mom had known Brooks personally. Used to say her mind was sharper than any blade she'd ever held. By the time Allied reinforcements arrived, the city's eastern district was in full retreat. They found Brooks unconscious in a bombed-out market stall, suffering from sepsis, multiple lacerations, and a partial collapsed lung. Kira's hand rose slowly. How many enemy casualties? Variks blinked, eyes narrowing just slightly. Confirmed? 51. Unconfirmed estimates vary between 70 to 90. The problem, Cadet, is that not all injuries were immediate. Some died of infections caused by modified chemical irritants she used in improvised traps. Others froze when she sabotaged their generators. We do not have clean data. Was she punished? Kira asked carefully. Nathan turned slightly at that. Punished? Kira hesitated, glancing around. I mean, she operated outside mission parameters, without command structure, in clear defiance of surrender conditions. A new voice answered. Nathan didn't recognize it, someone on the opposite side of the lecture hall. She wasn't punished, the voice said. She was given the solar shield, posthumously. She died 3 days after rescue from sepsis complications. Variks nodded once, eyes somber. Correct. And that brings us to the greater issue. The lights dimmed slightly as a massive dataset populated across the center display. Line graphs twisted into knots, bar charts reversed, heat maps pulsed red in odd, chaotic patterns. This, Variks said, is what happens when Earth Marines are introduced into conventional simulations. The room stared. Note the consistency in projections prior to deployment, and note the variance afterward. Models collapse, logistic forecasts become meaningless. Enemy behavior changes unpredictably. Resources are reallocated chaotically, often without strategic gain. Kira whispered. They cause disorder? They cause distortion, Variks corrected, because the traditional models assume that casualties reduce capability. That damage correlates with effectiveness. But Earth Marines... He paused, eyes resting briefly on Nathan. Do not function on equations, they break them. The Varnathi cadet from earlier leaned forward, frowning. But why? How? Every species has limits. What makes humans different? Nathan didn't want to speak again. He didn't want the weight of everyone's gaze. But this time, it wasn't about pride or defensiveness. It was about duty. They're not different, he said quietly. They just don't stop. Not because they're stronger. Not because they're smarter. It's because they're too damn stubborn to stay down. Kira stared. That's not scientific. No, Nathan agreed. It's not. But it's true. Another cadet, one of the insectoid Brelexi with shimmering exoskeletal ridges, twitched a forelimb. But if they cannot be modeled, how are they trained? How are they even allowed to function without jeopardizing larger operations? Nathan laughed, but it wasn't humorous. Because they work. And because the galaxy's uglier than your textbooks make it look. The people who send them in, they know what they're doing. Sometimes you don't need precision. Sometimes you need someone who'll hold the line even after it's gone. Kira looked unconvinced. That sounds like myth-making. Nathan locked eyes with her. Tell that to the families. Variks held up a hand before the conversation could spiral. Enough. The point of this lecture was not to glorify. It was to inform. And the information is clear when Earth Marines are involved. Standard assumptions no longer apply. Plans must adapt. And you must be prepared to accept that no equation can predict what one might do. Kira opened her mouth again, clearly ready with another question, but this time, someone else beat her to it. A quiet, skeptical voice. Dry. Calculated. The Drexan cadet who had remained silent until now. Tall, obsidian-scaled, with 4 cold yellow eyes. All these stories, they rely on individual accounts, anomalies, isolated variables. It's dramatic, yes, but where is the data set? The replicable trend? Or are we to believe Earth Marines are some kind of statistical ghost? That made the room stir. Not mocking, but intrigued. Finally, someone asking the math to stand on its own. Nathan stared down at his hands. Maybe, he murmured. Maybe ghosts is the right word. Varix turned to the Drexan, expression unreadable. I understand your skepticism, but let me offer one last example. The room fell still. Varix pulled up a final recording, not a chart, not a map, a video. A Marine's helmet feed, grainy and shaking. Blood spattered on the lens. A narrow hallway. Explosions far off. The Marine gasping, limping, dragging something behind him, a wounded comrade. Smoke, screams, radio static. The Marine's voice, ragged but firm. Target building cleared. Returning with injured. Requesting medevac. A crackling response. You're not cleared to exfil. That's enemy-controlled airspace. I'm aware. I'm not asking for clearance. I'm asking for coordinates. The feed cut out. Varix spoke quietly. He made it. Both of them did. 5 kilometers through hostile ground, injured, outgunned, bleeding. But he made it. The Drexan said nothing. No one did. Nathan didn't meet anyone's gaze. His fingers traced invisible patterns on his desk, jaw tight. My brother, he said, voice barely above a whisper. That made heads snap around again. Nathan exhaled slowly. He still has shrapnel in his shoulder. Nerve damage. Can't lift his arm more than 90 degrees. But he's alive, so's the guy he dragged back. Kira's voice was barely audible. Why didn't he wait for help? Because the guy he carried wouldn't have made it, Nathan said. And because no one tells a Marine to leave someone behind. He said it without pride, without bravado. Just a simple, worn truth. And this time, no one argued. The midday light filtered faintly through the domed ceiling of the lecture hall as the silence stretched into a kind of reverent paralysis. Cadets didn't fidget anymore. No one checked their holo displays. Even the Drexan, cold-eyed and calculating, had tucked in his mandibles. No, his mouth. His mouth, Nathan corrected himself reflexively, still fighting the urge to fade into the seat. Varix stood unmoving at the center platform, one hand clasped behind his back, the other lightly touching the edge of the display pedestal. His usual rhythm slide, explain, discuss, had long since collapsed. This wasn't a lecture anymore. It was a reckoning. This isn't how I expected today to go, Kira muttered near the front, breaking the quiet. Her voice was uncharacteristically soft. Varix didn't chastise her. Nor I, he admitted, but the truth rarely conforms to expectations, especially when it comes to Earth Marines. The hologram changed again. This time, there was no battlefield, no heat map, no glowing red indicators of violence, just a datapad interface, one that appeared to be actively struggling to generate a table. Rows flickered in and out. Columns auto-adjusted, then jittered. Values reset themselves. Attempted statistical model. Human Marine behavior over multi-theater engagements. This was the Confederation's 6th attempt to quantify Earth Marine performance in the Sarin discontinuity campaign. The model corrupted itself after 6 iterations. A low murmur rose from the middle rows. The Turlaxian cadet who'd earlier joked now raised both hands. But that makes no sense. You can't corrupt data by entering behavior into it. You can, Varix said calmly, if the data contradicts the rules the algorithm was built on. The logic cascade failed because Marines executed multiple operations simultaneously across terrains classified as non-survivable. Not only that, but they achieved objective completion in areas flagged as abandoned. Like what? Kira asked, narrowing her eyes. Varix turned to the display. The screen shifted again. Operation Cold Ember. Marine Squad Echo 9 was presumed lost after the drop shuttle malfunctioned. Atmospheric re-entry damaged all communication gear. The unit landed off target, deep in sub-zero terrain during a whiteout event. Recovery units were never deployed due to confirmed fatality markers. He paused. 3 weeks later, they reappeared at the extraction point, all accounted for. Minimal frostbite and carrying intelligence packets retrieved from inside enemy command. How? The Drexan finally asked, quietly. Nathan answered without turning. They wrapped their boots in heat-reactive insulation from the shuttle wreckage, dug into snowbanks and slept in rotational pairs. 8 ration bars laced with anti-nausea meds because the cold made digestion slow. Used melted snow and crushed tree bark as makeshift water purification. They followed the aurora patterns at night because it helped them navigate without GPS. He wasn't guessing, he was repeating. They studied the enemy's patrols, made decoys with spare armor, waited for supply drops, ambushed them, and used the enemy's gear to sneak into their base. Left a message carved into a door. Kira's voice came out strained. What did it say? Nathan finally turned to look at her. Still breathing. Her eyes widened. He looked away again. Varix let the silence settle, then broke it. The Academy has spent decades trying to reconcile these inconsistencies. Other species have soldiers who show bravery, ingenuity, loyalty. But Earth Marines show a pattern that defies boundaries entirely. They stretch the definitions of endurance, improvisation, and determination to a degree we cannot forecast. And so, the models fail. The Drexan finally leaned forward again. So, you're telling us, he said slowly, that Earth Marines aren't exceptional because of their tactics, or strength, or training. You're saying they're exceptional because they break the assumptions. Nathan surprised even himself by answering again. No, not break, ignore. Marines don't assume anything. They react. When the plan fails, they don't ask what now. They ask what next. Kira looked at him, her expression unreadable now. That doesn't sound tactical. It's not, Nathan replied. It's personal. Varix slowly circled the platform. This lecture was meant to prepare you for advanced strategic deployment planning. But let me be clear. If you ever face a battlefield with Earth Marines involved, you must accept the following. They will change your assumptions, not because they're trying to, but because they have no alternative. Their doctrine isn't built on conquest or numbers, it's built on returning home, and they will crawl if they have to. Another case study loaded onto the display, but this time it was just a still image. A single Marine lying on a hospital gurney, legs encased in external fixation braces, IV lines in both arms, one eye swollen shut, breathing tube still in place. Caption: Corporal Jason Heller, recovered after 78 hours, missing behind enemy lines. Varix spoke gently now. This man was hit by a mine. Broken femur, shattered tibia, collapsed lung, multiple internal bleeds. He was 22. His medkit was half frozen. He stabilized his leg using duct tape and field dressing stiffened with broken paneling from a destroyed drone. He kept moving, inch by inch. The image cut to a debrief transcript. Kira read the line aloud without prompting. I wasn't planning on dying in that dirt. My mom didn't raise me for that. Varix nodded once. 3 enemy soldiers surrendered to him the following day. According to the report, he was covered in his own blood, barely conscious, and still aiming a pistol with 2 broken fingers. Now the tension had shifted. No longer disbelief, no longer just awe. Something more unsettling. Respect tinged with fear. Kira turned toward Nathan again, this time with something almost apologetic in her expression. I used to think your people exaggerated, she said softly. The stories, the legends. I thought they were cultural self-glorification. But these reports... Nathan didn't respond right away. I used to think that too, he admitted at last. Then my dad came home after Kandahar 6, 2 months in a hospital, titanium pins in his hip. He taught me how to walk again before he could even run. Kira's voice caught. You ever think about joining? I applied, Nathan said. Didn't pass medical, asthma. Not bad, but bad enough. Something in his posture changed. Not shame, just honesty. So I came here instead. Figured if I couldn't serve, I'd at least understand the war better. Varex tapped a new prompt. The lecture's clock blinked. Time was almost up. He addressed the room one final time. There is no kill ratio for an Earth Marine, he said. There are no reliable metrics, no clean equations. You cannot count ghosts. You cannot quantify will. A long breath passed through the chamber. You will face threats with rules, logic, predictability. But one day, you may face something else, an Earth Marine, standing where no one should be alive, still fighting because he promised someone he'd come back. The cadets didn't move. Varex closed the display. That is not a number, he said. It's a warning. The lecture hall stayed quiet long after the display shut down. Some cadets sat perfectly still, processing. Others shifted slowly in their seats, as though their bodies had finally remembered to move again. No one spoke, not even Kira. Nathan Carter remained seated in the back, his hands clasped tightly together. He didn't look like someone who had just been vindicated. He looked tired. Not from the lecture, but from carrying all this for so long. Finally, Varex broke the silence. This session is formally concluded. No movement. He said it again, louder. You are dismissed. The doors whispered open. Still, no one stood, as if leaving would somehow reduce what they'd just heard, or worse, return them to a reality where the rules made sense again. It wasn't until Kira slowly pushed herself out of her chair that the others followed. One by one, the cadets filed out, quiet and contemplative. A few exchanged uncertain glances with Nathan as they passed, but no one spoke to him directly. No awkward jokes, no casual remarks. They knew better now. Kira hesitated near the aisle. She looked at Nathan like she wanted to say something meaningful, but couldn't quite find the words. Eventually, she just nodded once and left. When the hall finally emptied, Varex remained at the podium, fingers lightly drumming against the metal surface. The rhythm was irregular, thoughtful. Nathan stood and began collecting his things with deliberate care. He wasn't rushing to leave, just moving slowly, methodically. Cadet Carter, Varex said without turning. A moment. Nathan stopped. Yes, sir? You were measured, the instructor said, still not facing him. That matters. Nathan hesitated, unsure how to respond. I didn't want to be part of the story, he said finally. You weren't, Varex replied. You were the reminder that the stories are real. Nathan nodded faintly. Thank you, sir. He turned to go. Cadet, Varex added, voice quiet now. If your brother ever wishes to speak to one of our analysts, we'd like to know how he made it out. Some of our models are still attempting to process the angles of his escape. Nathan paused. He said the angle was west. Varex blinked. That's not a coordinate. No, Nathan said. That's where the sun was going down. He used the light to guide him because he didn't trust the compass after the blast. He slung his bag over his shoulder. Turns out, sunlight was more reliable than algorithms that day. Varex chuckled softly, an unusual sound from a Zenthari. Indeed. Nathan left. The walk back to the dorm quarters was uneventful. The central spire of the academy cast a long shadow over the courtyard. Light from 3 different suns filtered through the artificial atmosphere. It should have been beautiful. Nathan barely noticed. The moment his door hissed open, he dropped his bag by the bunk and sat on the edge of the bed. His hand went to the top drawer of the wall console, hesitated. Then he opened it. Inside was a battered data chip, its casing scuffed and heat-warped. He'd played the contents only once. That was enough. He held it between his fingers, thumb brushing over the charred edge. Hey Nate, the voice had said on the recording, weak, raspy, but smiling. If you're seeing this, I made it out. Or, I didn't, and some poor comms tech found this thing in a crater. Either way, this is for you. He set the chip down. Didn't play it. He already remembered every word. Elsewhere on campus, a group of cadets had gathered in one of the private discussion rooms. They were mid-ranking students, Talari, Shinari, Drexan, and even a few Thauxan tacticians. Normally, this group would be talking shop, comparing notes, arguing logistics. Today, they sat in silence. Finally, the Drexan cadet from the lecture spoke. There has to be a pattern, he said. Even chaos has rules. Kira shook her head. That's what I thought too. But we need a number, the Drexan insisted. Even a range, something. Kira looked at him. You saw the same thing I did. You want a kill ratio? She asked. Here's one. One Marine with broken legs captured 14 enemies and returned alive. Another held off an army with cookware. One turned a failed mission into an intelligence win after 3 weeks in Sub-Zero. What number do you want? The Drexan was quiet. It's not about numbers, another cadet murmured. They all turned. It was one of the Thalkson, usually aloof and uninterested in any topic outside fleet combat. She leaned forward now, mandibles no, mouth pressed into a tight line. It's about the idea of them, she said. That's somewhere out there, in the mud and the blood and the freezing dark, someone refuses to die, refuses to stop, refuses to quit. That changes how wars are fought. Kira nodded slowly. It changes how enemies think. And how allies hope, the Thalkson added. A pause. Then, softly, that's not a ratio. That's a reckoning. 2 weeks later, a small memo circulated internally among instructors and strategic planners at the Academy. The file was titled, Revised Parameters, Earth-Marine Engagement Variables. The summary at the top was just 1 sentence long. Operational planning must acknowledge that Earth Marines cannot be predicted by standard models. Their success is not statistical, it is existential. Nathan never attended another combat analytics lecture after that day. He didn't need to. Instead, he shifted into tactical support theory and humanitarian logistics, areas where he could build systems that caught the ones who almost didn't come home. He graduated 3 years later, without honors, without ceremony. But on the day he left, he received a small box. No sender, no note. Inside was a rusted field stove, folded flat, corners still dented. It was signed in ink that had nearly faded. Uncle James, still breathing. Nathan smiled. Then, for the first time in years, he let himself cry.